Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're getting into a new batch of creepy stories. And this one is all about the kind of fear that comes from being reachable. Your email, your work login, your seller account, your shift schedule, all those boring little details we hand over every day without thinking too hard about them. And these stories get pretty uncomfortable because they start in normal places. A side job from home, a night shift, a support ticket, a pharmacy counter. Nothing supernatural, nothing over the top, just people realizing that someone knows a little too much and that the problem is not staying behind a screen. So if you enjoy stories like this, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had an online problem turn weird in real life. All right, let's get into the first story. I used to close at a little neighborhood market in a strip mall off a main road. Cigarettes, milk, scratch-offs, cheap chargers, energy drinks, stuff people remembered they needed before we locked up. The store was small. Cigarettes behind me, lottery terminal on my left, locked vape case near the counter. Tiny back office with the safe. The back door opened into the service lane, which smelled like cardboard and fryer grease. Closing alone wasn't ideal, but it happened. We were short-staffed, and after the cash drop, my manager sometimes left me to finish. I lived 10 minutes away on foot, so if my roommate couldn't get me, I walked. That night was a Thursday, I think. I was tired, hungry, and trying not to mess up the drawer. My manager left and told me to text when I got home. I counted the register, put the cash envelope in the safe, locked the vape case, and shut off some lights. One customer was still near the chargers. Late 30s, maybe. Work jacket, baseball cap, no basket. He kept picking up the same cable and putting it back. Not a huge red flag. More like, great, I'll have to tell him we're closed twice. I gave him the normal warning. Just so you know, we close in 5. He asked if we opened at 7 or 8. I said 7. Then he asked if the same people worked opening and closing. I didn't love that, but I said it depended. Then he looked past me toward the back office just for a second. I told myself, he was probably looking for a bathroom sign. People did that, even though ours wasn't public. He bought earbuds and left. I locked the front door after him and checked it twice. Then I did the rest on autopilot. Safe locked, office door shut, vape case checked. I grabbed my sandwich and chips and went out back. Our alarm used this old black fob with a rubber button that didn't always work on the first press. Close door, press, wait for the beep, pull the handle. Keys looped around my fingers, food in that hand, phone in my hoodie. I stepped into the service lane and almost walked right into him. He was standing a few feet from the back door, off to the side, out of the light. My brain took a second. He should have been gone. He lifted one hand and said, "Hey, sorry. I left my phone inside." I looked toward the front, like maybe he had walked around by mistake. But no, he was at the employee door. I said, "I can't let anyone back in after the alarm is set." He gave me a quick customer smile. 10 seconds. I was just at the charger thing. If it's in there, opening shift will find it in the morning. I need it now. I have to call an Uber. I almost offered to call one. Retail does that to your brain. Then I saw him looking at my hand. Keys between my fingers. Alarm fob under my thumb. Bag around the same knuckles. I kept my voice flat. Lost items go through the manager. Come back at 7. He stepped closer. Not a lunge, just closer. "Come on," he said. "You were just in there, and now it's locked, so unlock it." That was when it stopped feeling like a missing phone thing. I thought about pulling out my phone, but he was too close and washing my hands. I said, "Go to the front and come back tomorrow." He looked down the service lane, then back at the door behind me. "Manager already gone?" I didn't answer. I stepped away from the door and started walking. My normal route went behind the stores, past the nail salon, the empty insurance office, the bakery, then out to the brighter side street. At first, I thought he would stay by the door, or maybe bang on the front glass like angry customers did. I kept my pace steady because I didn't want to look like I was running. Then I heard his steps behind me. Not right on top of me, but close enough. His boots scraped on gravel. "Miss," he called. I'm not trying to make this a thing. I didn't turn around. I just need my phone. The bakery sometimes had people in late, doing prep. Marco came in most mornings for coffee. I knew his name. I didn't know if he was there. Behind me, the man said, "Why'd you beep that thing?" My feet kept moving, but my head froze. "What?" "The thing in your hand, you beeped it. Is that the alarm?" I glanced back. He was still coming, with his hands out, like I was the rude one. He sounded like he was figuring out our door. I said, "Store is closed. You can open it back up. I saw you lock the door." "No, you have the keys." That got me, because it wasn't a question. He sounded like a guy who had stood in the dark, watched a tired employee come out alone, and realized she had access. He was closer now, not running, but not falling back. I thought about the store, then knew I couldn't. I thought about home, and that was worse. The only place that might still have people was the bakery. I angled toward it. No window back there, just a metal side door and a delivery sign. He noticed right away. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I walked faster, still trying not to make it a scene. Stupid, I know. Then his voice changed. "You're making this a problem for no reason," he said. "It's easier if you just open the door." I moved faster. "Give me the keys for 1 minute." That was the first time he said keys out loud. I don't remember deciding to run. Just doing it badly, food bag tangled around my fingers, keyring digging into my skin. He caught up. His hand grabbed my sleeve by my wrist, the side with the keys. The key ring snapped, and my sandwich and chips hit the pavement. I jerked back hard, not in some brave way. I almost fell. The sleeve stretched, and his fingers caught the alarm fob before it slipped loose. I yanked free. I didn't fight him. I didn't swing the keys. I ran to the bakery door and pounded with the side of my fist because the keys were still in my hand. The door had no window. That was the worst part. I could hear ventilation inside, or one of the ovens, making my knocking sound tiny. I yelled for someone to open up. Nobody opened. For a few seconds, I was sure I had picked the night they had all gone home. Then I started yelling Marco's name. "Marco! Marco, open the door." The man was almost behind me. I could hear him breathing. He said something like, "Stop yelling," but he didn't sound calm anymore. Then something moved behind the door. A lock turned. The door opened only a crack. Marco was there in a flour-dusted shirt with an older guy behind him, holding a scraper. The man behind me stopped so fast I heard his shoes skid. Marco looked at me, then over my shoulder. He pulled the door wider and said, "Get in." I got inside and the older guy stepped into the doorway. There were 2 grown men between me and the service lane. The guy in the cap backed up, with both hands kind of raised, like this was all a misunderstanding. Then he walked fast toward the parking lot, not running, just fast enough to be gone. They called the police from the bakery. By then, I had a description that sounded like half the men who came through our store, a stretched out sleeve, and my food bag lying in the lane with the sandwich wrapper torn open. Marco asked if I wanted him to grab it. I said no. The officers wrote down what I told them and checked the camera, but it only showed dark pavement, the edge of the dumpster, and a shape that could have been a person, if you already knew what you were looking for. The next morning, my manager found the handle on our back door bent down, like somebody had tried to force it after closing. There was one dirty smear near the lower glass, probably from a shoe, but not clear enough to be useful. She said maybe it wasn't connected, maybe some drunk messed with it later, but she didn't put me on closing alone again. For a long time after, even on day shifts, I kept the keys balled inside my fist so hard that when I got home and opened my hand, the little teeth of them had left marks in my palm. The screenshot of his own apartment door is the moment where my stomach just drops. Because up until then, it's creepy, it's invasive, it's a nightmare tech situation, but you can still pretend it's contained to the laptop. Then suddenly, it is not contained at all. Someone is close enough to stand outside his place, close enough to know the package on the mat, close enough to prove it. That is such a nasty way to scare somebody, because it turns their own home into evidence against them. And I don't blame him for freezing for a second. I think most people would. All right, let's move on. I was outside Harrisburg when I finally admitted I had to stop for gas. I didn't pull into that station because it looked safe. It didn't. It was after midnight and I had been driving long enough that the exits were starting to blur together. My aunt's funeral had been that morning. After the service and cemetery, a few of us went back to her house, and people kept handing me things they didn't want to throw away. Papers, old photos, framed pictures, some breakable things, and this green desk lamp that had been in her living room forever. Most of it ended up in my car, because I apparently say yes to everything when I'm tired. I had a small sedan. The back seat was packed almost to the windows. The passenger side had file boxes on the floor, a tote bag under the dash, and the lamp across the seat with a towel around the shade. So that's why I didn't just climb in through that side later. It wasn't impossible. It just didn't feel doable. At 1 a.m, with my head pounding and half my aunt's house stacked beside me, the gas light had been on long enough that I kept looking at the needle instead of the road. I missed one big travel plaza because I was stuck behind a semi, so I told myself I'd take the next place with lights. The place I picked was a little independent gas station off the ramp by itself. 2 pumps, bright canopy, ice freezer against the wall. Not comforting, but the front door was lit up and I could see the counter from outside. The closest pump was right by the entrance. Park close, pay fast, pump gas, leave. I pulled in nose first at the pump nearest the store and went inside because the pump screen looked old and half dead. The cashier was maybe in her 50s with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain. She looked like she had been dealing with nonsense all night. While she rang me up, she kept looking toward the side of the building. There was a dark puck-up over there with an empty utility trailer hooked to it, parked crooked near the ice freezer. The cashier muttered, "I already told him." From what I gathered, the guy had come in before me, bought something small, and asked about the restroom. She had asked him to move because his trailer was blocking the freezer. When she slid my receipt over, she said, "He says he's leaving. They all say that." I grabbed a bottled water and one of those awful gas station coffees. While I was putting creamer in it, the pickup guy leaned halfway back inside. He was a bigger guy, baseball cap low. I didn't get a good look at his face. He told the cashier, flat and annoyed, that he wasn't blocking anything. She said, "You're blocking the ice." He said he was by himself, Wasn't waiting on anybody, and he'd be out of there in a minute. That was it. No shouting. Just a rude guy at a gas station and a cashier who was sick of him. He went back outside. I paid and fought with the coffee lid because my hands were cold. The cashier looked out again and shook her head. I said, "People don't know how to park those things." She said, "They know. They just don't care." That made sense to me. That was the box I put him in. When I went back outside, I had my purse across my shoulder, coffee in one hand, water tucked against my side, and my keys looped around 2 fingers. My car was still there, nose toward the store, close to the door. But the pickup had moved. Not a lot. It had just shifted closer and angled in from the side, with the trailer swung out into the space next to my car. At first, I thought he had tried to move away from the ice freezer and screwed it up. Not danger, just, great, this idiot can't back a trailer. Then I got to my driver's door, the trailer rail, and one of the fenders were almost against my car. Not touching, I don't think, but close enough that I stopped and stared. I tried the door twice, like the second pull would change physics. It opened maybe 4 inches, maybe less, just enough to bump against the trailer rail. There was a narrow slot between my car and the trailer. If I turned sideways, I probably could have walked into it, barely, but I had my purse hanging off me, my hands full, and the door wouldn't open enough to get in like a normal person. I would have had to shuffle sideways, pin something to my chest, and fold myself through. At the time, I was more irritated than scared. I hate saying that, but it's true. I was exhausted. I wanted gas. I wanted to go home. I walked around the front of my car to check the passenger side. That door opened, technically. But the second I pulled it, the boxes shifted. If I climbed in that way, half the stuff was going to spill onto the dirty concrete. I was standing there with the passenger door barely open when I heard the pickup window roll down. "You can get in," he said. "Just turn sideways." I looked over the roof of my car. He was still behind the wheel, engine running, one arm up on the window. He didn't say sorry. He didn't offer to move. I said, "Can you move it back a little?" He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. "You got room." Again, I was annoyed. Before, I was scared. In my head, this was still a stupid parking lot argument. My phone was in my coat pocket, but my purse strap was over that side, and my hands were full. He said it again. "Just turn sideways." Same voice, same words. That was when it stopped feeling like normal rude. He wasn't saying he would move in a second. He just kept repeating the one option, where I had to step into the gap between my car and his trailer. I shut the passenger door carefully because the boxes were already leaning out, then walked back around the front of my car. I had my keys ready. I think I was still angry enough that I was about to try it, just to get away from him. Then I heard tapping on glass. I looked toward the store, thinking maybe I had forgotten my card. The cashier was at the front door with one hand flat on the glass and the other waving hard. Not a casual wave. Her face looked completely different. She yelled through the door, "Inside, now." I backed away from the trailer and went to her. I didn't run, but I moved fast. As soon as I got through the door, she pulled it shut and worked the deadbolt with both hands. For a second, we just stood there. She kept looking over my shoulder through the glass. Then she said very low, "He told me he was alone." I said, "What?" She pointed toward the truck. I saw something move on the passenger side. That was all she could say for sure. Not a face. Maybe a shoulder, an arm, or a reflection in the side glass. Moving wrong. But it was movement inside the pickup on the passenger side after he had told her nobody else was with him. The pickup sat there a few more seconds. Then it jerked backward hard enough that the empty trailer clanked. I flinched when it swung past my car because the metal rail went right by my driver's door, with almost no room. He didn't peel out or do anything dramatic. He just left fast and disappeared down the ramp. The cashier told me not to go outside yet. She called somebody, maybe the owner or a dispatcher, then checked the cameras on a little monitor under the register. There wasn't much. The plate was blown out by the canopy lights. The cab was dark. The angle mostly showed what we already knew. The trailer had been blocking my door. Eventually, she came outside with me and stood near the entrance while I checked the car. Nothing looked broken, nothing was missing. My aunt's boxes were still jammed into the passenger side. My driver's door opened fine once the trailer was gone. I got gas, with her watching from the doorway, and then I drove home without stopping again. The next morning, in my own driveway, I noticed the driver's door didn't close cleanly anymore, just a little catch near the rubber seal, like something had pressed it out of shape. I can't prove it came from that night, I just know that door had never caught like that before. The detail that really messes with me here is the oatmeal cookies. I know that sounds small, but that is exactly why it hits so hard. That is such a personal, harmless little care detail, and hearing it come out of a stranger's mouth at a locked facility door is just horrible. It means the person did not just have data. They had enough to sound familiar, enough to sound safe. And with a memory care resident, that is terrifying, because the whole system depends on tired workers recognizing who belongs and who doesn't. The fact that one outdated nurse name stopped it is honestly chilling. Let's keep going. I didn't start shredding my mail until after this happened. Junk mail, receipts, pharmacy papers, random things from my purse, all of it went into the kitchen trash with coffee grounds and food wrappers. I never thought about it. At the time, I lived in an older apartment complex, old enough that everything kind of half worked. 4 buildings around a courtyard, side entrances, back stairs, a little mail alcove between 2 buildings, and the dumpsters out by the rear parking lot. The leasing office camera saw the front walkway and maybe the tops of a few cars, not the dumpsters. Management was strict about trash in the hallways. A couple weeks before this, they started posting pictures in the resident chat of bags left outside doors, then sent emails about pests, sanitation, fines, all of it. So a lot of us started taking trash out whenever the bag was full, even late. I wasn't trying to be brave. I just didn't want a trash fine. That night, I got home from work, ate standing in the kitchen, and cleaned up before bed. Something in the bag had leaked, so I was already annoyed. I shoved my keys into my hoodie pocket and went out through the side door near my stairs. The bag was normal trash. Food wrappers, a grocery receipt, open junk mail, and a couple papers from my purse. Nothing I thought mattered. Near the dumpsters, I saw a dark older sedan backed into the space beside the enclosure. The windows were fogged from the inside, and the trunk was cracked open just enough for the little light to be on. I slowed down, but I didn't turn around. People did weird stuff by those dumpsters all the time. A weird car there was unpleasant, not automatically dangerous. I pulled the sliding door open with one hand, and when I lifted the bag, a man stepped out from the other side of the fence. I jerked back so hard, the bag hit my shin. He was in a dark hoodie and jeans. Late 30s, maybe. He didn't look like some movie criminal, just a guy you might pass in the parking lot and forget 2 seconds later. "Sorry," he said. "You live here?" I said something like, "Yeah, sort of," which made no sense, and tossed the bag in. He looked past me toward the walkways. "This the 3rd building, or the 4th? I'm not sure," I said. That was a lie. I knew where I lived, but I didn't want to give him anything exact. He laughed short and irritated. I'm trying to find somebody. These buildings are confusing. Then I started walking away, but not straight toward my door. I angled toward the middle of the courtyard, like I was headed somewhere else. I didn't have a plan. I just didn't want him seeing which entrance I used. That was when I noticed he wasn't watching my face. He was watching where I was going. He started walking too. Not fast. That almost made it worse. He stayed far enough back that from a window, it might not look like anything. Which doors stay open late around here? I looked over my shoulder. None of them are supposed to. Yeah, but one of them usually does, right? That made my stomach tighten. The doors did have problems. Everybody complained about them. But there is a difference between I'm lost and which door doesn't latch. I don't know, I said. He made this annoyed sound. Where are the mailboxes? He pointed the wrong way, but not by much. I didn't answer. I just kept walking, trying not to speed up because some dumb part of me thought if I acted normal, it would stay normal. Behind me, he said, I'm just asking. And I almost apologized. I hate that part. I slowed down for half a step because I was worried about being rude to the man following me at night. Then a car door slammed. I looked back and saw another man getting out of the sedan. He was heavier with a cap pulled low. The trunk was still open, and the car gave one little warning. Beep. The second guy said something low and angry. I didn't catch all of it, but I caught two words clearly. Too early. That was when it stopped being maybe a misunderstanding. The second man started cutting across the parking spaces instead of using the walkway. He wasn't sprinting. He was moving toward the regular entrance, the one anyone would assume I was about to use. I could see him between cars, lose him behind a hood, then see him again. The first man said, sharper now, hold up. I asked you something. I had my hand in my hoodie pocket, squeezing my keys so hard, the teeth dug into my palm. My brain kept trying to keep it in the category of weird and not dangerous. My usual entrance was ahead and a little to the right. Light over the door, stairs inside. My apartment. Deadbolt. Behind me, the first man said, lower this time, watch where she goes. Or maybe it was, see where she goes. I can't swear to the exact words. I just know what I understood. They didn't only want to stop me. They wanted to see which door I used. I was already drifting toward that entrance because that was what my body knew. I had my fingers around the little square fob and I was maybe 10 steps from the reader when I remembered the latch. People had been complaining about that door for weeks. Sometimes you had to pull the handle up and shove it with your shoulder. Sometimes the reader flashed green and the door still didn't open. On a normal night, it was irritating. On that night, 5 extra seconds with my back to the parking lot felt like a terrible idea. So I turned. Not dramatically. I didn't run. I just cut left, like I had changed my mind and headed for the fire stairs at the end of the building. There was a metal door there, with a separate old key I only carried because months earlier I had gotten stuck outside the main entrance with groceries. The first man noticed right away. Hey, he said. The second one didn't, not at first. He kept moving toward the regular entrance for a second. Then the car started beeping because the trunk was still open, and he looked back like he had missed something. That was all the time I got. My hand was shaking so badly, I scraped the wrong key against the lock first. Then I got the old key in, turned it, and pulled. The door stuck for half a second, and I remember thinking, of course this one sticks too. Behind me, footsteps got faster. I got the door open, slipped inside sideways, and pulled it shut with both hands. It clicked. I stood there with my shoulder against it, still holding the knob because I didn't trust the click. I wanted to go straight to my apartment, but stairwells carry noise, so I went up instead. I passed my floor and went one higher, with one hand on the wall, because my knees felt loose. From that landing, a narrow window looked out over part of the courtyard and the edge of the parking lot. Not a great view. Enough. They didn't leave. One of them went to the entrance I had almost used and yanked the handle hard. The other went toward the passage where the mailboxes were. I lost sight of him, but he came back maybe 30 seconds later. Then, both of them went back to the dumpsters. At first, I thought they were taking something from the trunk. Then, I realized they were pulling bags out. They weren't looking for food or bottles or furniture. They were ripping trash bags open and shaking through the paper, letting the gross stuff spill onto the concrete. I stayed on that landing until I couldn't hear the car anymore. I never got a plate. I could only see the side of the sedan and the fogged rear window. The next morning, the resident chat was going crazy before I even got out of bed. A woman from Building 3 posted that someone had torn open several trash bags overnight and left envelopes, pharmacy receipts, and billing statements scattered around the dumpster area. I remembered my white kitchen bag sitting right on top. Then I checked the lock on my apartment door and stood over my trash can, tearing every piece of paper with my name or address on it into strips. The empty mailer in the locker is such a nasty little reveal, not because it's loud or dramatic, but because it tells you she was pulled there on purpose. There were no boots, no real return, just a torn package with her seller name on it, sitting there like bait. And then the guy says that name out loud. That would make my skin crawl. There is something so violating about a stranger knowing the fake little username you use online and saying it to your face in public. Like the internet suddenly grew legs and followed you into CVS. I'm glad she walked toward the cashier instead of trying to tough it out. I used to work nights at an old apartment complex outside Dayton, Ohio. 3 buildings, side stairs everywhere, and plumbing that should have been replaced before I got hired. I was the emergency maintenance guy, Matt Reynolds. People in the West Wing knew me as Matt from maintenance. I don't do emergency shifts anymore. This is why. Most nights were boring. A toilet running at 1 a.m., a lock that wouldn't catch, somebody's heat going out. We had one security guard, but he mostly stayed by the office monitors. The camera by the side stairwell in the wing was decoration. Sometimes the red light blinked. Sometimes it didn't. My routine was simple. Maintenance phone, master keys, work order log, cart with towels, gloves, flashlight, and tools. If water came from under a door and the tenant didn't answer, I had to take pictures, call the number in the system, message dispatch, and go in to shut it off. If somebody was down in a bathroom and I waited, that came back on me. The tenants knew the routine too. I'd knock, say my name, hold my badge up, and give them space. Mrs. Brooks in 2B was the strictest. She was older, had just had surgery, and always opened on the chain first. She'd call through the door, "Is that Matt?" and still make me show the badge. The call came a little after 2 in the morning. Dispatch said there was water under the door at 2C, nobody answering, and a woman in the hall saying she'd come to check on her mother and was scared she had fallen in the bathroom. That sounded bad. Not weird, just bad. 2C had problems before. Tub drain, toilet, kitchen trap. That whole wing had water stains, if you knew where to look. So I grabbed the cart and went over, half asleep and annoyed, if I'm being honest. A woman was standing outside 2C wearing a robe over regular clothes. She had sneakers on. It looked off, but people throw on whatever they can at night. So I let it go. "Thank God," she said. "It's coming out." I don't know how long she's been in there. There was water at the threshold. Not a lot, but enough to darken the carpet and shine along the baseboard. A towel was shoved against the bottom of the door. I touched the carpet with my glove, wet and cold. Then I put my ear near the door. That was the first thing that bothered me. Usually you hear something, a toilet hissing, water tapping, anything. This was quiet. I asked for the tenant's name. Linda, she said. My mom, she takes baths late. She has bad balance. The system did not say Linda, but records in that place were garbage. Old contacts, relatives staying over, bad names from dispatch. So I didn't treat it like proof. I called the number for 2C. Voicemail. I took pictures of the water and towel, then texted dispatch that I was entering under emergency water access. The woman saw me typing and got tense. She could be hurt. I know. Step back from me. She stepped back, but barely, and I opened it. It sounds stupid now, but at 2 a.m. with water on the carpet and a possible fall, you don't stand there playing detective. The door opened halfway. There was a short entry turn inside 2C, and the kitchen wall blocked the corner behind the door. I thought something was on the floor. Laundry basket? Maybe. I had the flashlight in my left hand. Then I stepped inside. Someone hit me from that hidden corner. Before I got the light up, my shoulder bounced off the wall. My feet went out, and I landed face first on the vinyl. The flashlight rolled away and lit the bottom cabinets. Then a knee went into my back. A man said, "Get his phone." Another one kicked me in the ribs, and my mouth hit my teeth. I tasted blood immediately. The woman came in behind me, and she wasn't shaking anymore. "You idiot," she said. He sensed something. One of them emptied my pockets, maintenance phone, my own phone, whatever else I had. He yanked the keyring off my belt and tossed it on the counter. I still remember that sound. All those keys hitting laminate. Then he ripped my badge off my shirt. I tried to say I didn't have money, which makes no sense, but that's where my brain went. Phones, keys, badge, robbery. The guy on my back twisted my arm until I shut up. The other one was already going through the keys. The woman said, "The old lady's door. Find that one." That made me stop moving. The guy with the keys snapped. "Keys don't open the chain." "I know that," she said. "She won't open for us. She opens for him." There was no flooded bathroom, no mother, no running water. Just that towel by the door and my face on the dirty floor, while they talked like I was a tool they had picked up. I heard Brooks. I heard pills. I heard something about the girl who used to help her, knowing where things were. And then I got it. They didn't just need my keys. They needed me. They got me up by my shirt and belt. My knees hit the wall, then the door frame, and I almost fell again before one of them hooked an arm under me. The woman kept whispering, "Just make him say it. She knows him." I tried to think of something useful. Say the wrong apartment, tell Mrs. Brooks to call the office, cough out a warning. Anything. But my lip was split. Blood was in my mouth, and I couldn't breathe right because of my ribs. They put me in front of 2 billion, but wrong. Too close to the door and off to the side. I never stood like that. At night, I gave people space and kept the cart where they could see it. The cart was still outside 2C. One of the men squeezed the back of my neck and said, "Say it normal." So I knocked. "Mrs. Brooks," I said, and my voice cracked on her name. "It's Matt. Maintenance." Water came down the stack. "I need to check your bathroom." Nothing happened for a second. Then I heard her walker, slow, metal, rubber feet on the floor. The little peephole cover clicked. "Matt?" "Yes, ma'am." "You don't sound right." The hand on my neck tightened. "I got hit with some splashback," I said. I don't know why I said that. My mouth was full of blood and it came out thick. The chain slid, but only to the stop. The door opened a few inches. Mrs. Brooks looked through the gap, my face, my shirt, then passed me toward the hallway where my cart should have been. She didn't say anything right away. One of the men shoved me into the crack and tried to reach around me for the chain. The hallway light caught my collar, blood on my gray maintenance shirt. She stepped back so fast her walker scraped the floor. The door stayed on the chain. Then she screamed. Not a weak scream. Loud and angry. The kind that makes other people open doors. A door upstairs opened. Somebody yelled down. The woman behind me hissed for me to say it again, but it was too late. From inside 2B, Mrs. Brooks was already yelling into a phone that men had Matt from maintenance at her door. They dropped me in the hall and ran. One of them kicked my leg out from under me, then they went for the side stairwell, the one with the useless camera. After that, I only remember pieces. Carpet against my cheek, somebody putting a towel under my mouth, doors opening, sirens outside. A cop asking about my phones, keys, badge, the camera, who touched what. I wanted somebody to explain what had happened, but they needed times and items first. Later, I got pieces of it. Mrs. Brooks did have strong pain pills from her surgery. She kept cash in the apartment too. One woman who used to help her around the house had been seen with people who didn't live in the complex. That was about all I ever got. The company changed the night call policy after that. I tried to keep working for a few weeks, but every knock after midnight made my throat lock up. The last time I went to Mrs. Brooks' apartment was in daylight for a loose bathroom handle that took maybe 5 minutes. She recognized my voice, made me hold my badge up to the peephole, and still called the office before she took the chain off. Bad pharmacist is such an upsetting label because it is wrong, it is stupid, and somehow it still almost gets her hurt. That is what makes this one so scary to me. She is not the decision maker, she is not the person approving anything, but once her face and schedule are floating around, none of that matters to the wrong people. She becomes the target anyway. And the image of that hand coming around the back door is just awful. No big speech, no movie villain moment, just a hand and a man repeating words he barely understands. That feels way too real for a night shift job. I'm gonna leave you with this, because it's the part of these stories that really sticks. None of this feels far away. It's not some abandoned house or some stranger in the woods. It's your inbox, your account, your workplace, your drop-off spot, your name on a schedule. It's the boring stuff that usually makes life easier suddenly being used against you. And I think that's why this whole video feels so uncomfortable. The danger doesn't announce itself. It looks like a normal message, a normal customer, a normal ticket, a normal shift, until one small detail proves somebody knows more than they should. Have you ever had something online cross over into real life in a way that made you uncomfortable? Tell me about it in the comments. And if you liked this video, leave a like. Subscribe if you're new, and seriously, thank you for watching. Be careful with what you share, and I'll see you next time.